We continue on now to Movie Spotlight, our weekly feature where we discuss and review some of the latest cinematic releases at the Korean box office and online. And we do that with the help of our film critics, of course. First, we have Jason Bechervaise. Jason, hello, it's good to see you.
Hello, Django. It's great to be here on this another very hot day.
Another very hot day, indeed. And this week we have Marc Raymond in the other chair as well. Marc, hello. It's great to see you too.
Yeah, nice to see you again.
Okay, so this week, one Hollywood and one local release. This week's big release is Oppenheimer. It has finally been released here in Korea. It opened in most of the world almost a month ago, at the same time as the Barbie movie, of course, which led to audiences watching both films back to back, leading to that phenomenon that was dubbed Barbenheimer. It has already grossed over $600 million globally, but in Korea, Oppenheimer was given a delayed release. So, Marc, Korea may be a bit late to the party, but for those who don't know, can you set up for us?
Yeah, this is the most recent film from Christopher Nolan, who is, of course, one of the box office giants of the past couple decades, probably matched only by James Cameron in that kind of realm, but also a widely respected auteur and somebody who's considered, by many one of the great filmmakers in the world. And this time he takes on a biography, the kind of traditional Hollywood biopic of Robert Oppenheimer, who, of course, is famous for his role in developing the atomic bomb. And this film basically is a biopic in many in some traditional ways, but it doesn't follow a lot of Oppenheimer's early years. It does focus mostly on the process of putting together this kind of group of scientists, going to Los Alamos in New Mexico, and basically the developing of the bomb and then the consequences of that. It does also have kind of this framing story, which you'll kind of see right from the beginning and then comes back at the end, where Oppenheimer's basically not exactly on trial, but his loyalty to the United States is kind of questioned because of his kind of left-wing associations from the 30s, which the film also kind of gets into. And one of the more interesting parts of the movie is the fact that it kind of links this kind of theoretical physics of Oppenheimer with experiments in the arts, and that's clearly the influence of Nolan and Nolan's interest in art as well as science, and this kind of blending together. So this is obviously a huge movie in terms of its length. It's 3 hours long. It's meant mostly for IMAX formats, unfortunately, because of course there's only so many IMAX screens, and so people. Yes. All the IMAX screens are very difficult to get sort of tickets to, and that's been a problem. And it's also got this huge kind of cast, this, not only Cillian Murphy in the lead, but then Matt Damon, Florence Pugh, Robert Downey Jr. as well has kind of a fairly big role, a supporting role, but a fairly large role as well. So it is this kind of massive kind of undertaking from Nolan. And it does really feel like Nolan, with this film, is really trying to make kind of, his masterpiece. He is trying to really, I guess he does that almost every time. He kind of swings for the fences, but this really does feel like, I'm making the definitive kind of movie about, the atomic age, about this historical event.
Sure.
A little bit like Dunkirk, which was, of course, this film 2 films ago. It has a lot of similarities to that film, but even on a large, Dunkirk was already this massive film. This one almost feels bigger than that.
Right, so there's been a lot of anticipation. Jason, I know you are a big Nolan fan, right? Perhaps one of your favorite filmmakers besides Bong Joon-ho. I'm imagining you were anticipating this film greatly as well. How did it live up to your expectations then? What do you think of it?
Yeah, certainly he's one of my favourite Hollywood filmmakers. It's just an incredible mind of his that he brings into his movies. And so, my expectations were pretty high. And it was really frustrating for me because I'm actually quite fortunate. I get to see films early, but this film I got to see quite late compared to many other people, across the world. And it surprised me in ways that, I wasn't expecting. It is a visually spectacular, as you expect with Nolan, right? And so you've got this atomic test, and it was more subtle than I was expecting, and yet more powerful at the same time. And the sound is extraordinary. So if you do go and watch it, in a big theatre, if you're lucky to do that, focus on the visuals obviously, but also take note of the sound. I've been trying to see at one of the Dolby cinemas here in Korea, and the storytelling is not quite as experimental as some of his other films, Dunkirk or Inception, but at the same time he does do that thing where he's kind of it's not a linear narrative. He's not conventional. This is Christopher Nolan. He can make these big films, but he's able to kind of take audiences in different directions and do something new, and he's certainly done this with a biopic. I don't know of a biopic quite like it, and Cillian Murphy just throws everything into this performance. And he should get nominated for an Oscar. He probably should win. We'll see. It depends. Nolan's films don't have a great track record at the Academy Awards. But yeah, it just has everything you want in a film. But at the same time, Nolan is wrestling with this kind of nuclear age, and you see that through this character study and how, yes, the bomb ultimately ended World War II, but it also entered a new age of nuclear, testing and warfare, and it's still very much relevant today. So, it left me feeling very somber and certainly a very thought-provoking film, and I want to see it again. Masterpiece, fantastic.
Right, so I was going to say, you were clearly moved, but initially you didn't say whether you liked the film, but you're saying it's a masterpiece.
It is. I mean, it's just extraordinary. I mean, it's just, you have to see it on an IMAX screen if you can, because, it focuses on these characters, and that's also part of the spectacle. And that kind of referring to what I was saying earlier, and that's something that surprised me. It's not just about this test; it's actually about the characters themselves.
So, Mark, Jason's clearly blown away. I understand you've not been as big a fan of Nolan as Jason and many others. But then, what did you think about this film?
Yeah, I think this is his best film, and I liked it quite a bit. I think Nolan, both this and Dunkirk, is a good direction he kind of gone in with this taking on these historical matters. Because one of my problems with his movie, like Inception, is like there's a lot of exposition and there's a lot of like explaining and a lot of like telling instead of showing. And I think with the historical films, it's freed him a bit from that, because he's like, well, this is history, you should know at least the basics, so I'm not going to explain everything. And it kind of really freed up his kind of storytelling. And it's allowed, the strengths he has, which are, of course, these great visuals. And as Jason was saying, the visuals, it's not just the atomic test, but to me, it's like the close-ups of Cillian Murphy's face and his eyes. And on that huge screen, just has like this really like dramatic effect, right? And yeah, the storytelling, the last like almost act of the film, I think ultimately works, but is kind of a bit of a departure in terms of like the way the movie almost feels like a kind of an anticlimax, kind of like this long. But I think it ultimately goes to Jason's point. He mentioned that it's kind of a somber film, and it kind of needs that, that kind of come down to kind of get at that feeling. And so I think ultimately it kind of worked, and all the acting is just great. It's probably the best acted Nolan film I can remember in terms of like the whole cast and just the complete.
As a lead, Cillian Murphy, he's sensational. Yeah.
And there's no false kind of performances in it. It's a very, very strong work. And so I would.
Wow, so it's won over the Nolan acolyte and the doubter as well. Very, very briefly, Jason, do you think it'll work for a Korean audience as well? What's the admissions numbers looking like? Because Barbie didn't do very well, right?
Sorry?
Barbie didn't do very well, right?
No. That's a conversation for another time. But
yes.
It did. It's doing very well, actually. 800,000 tickets so far. Reservation rates are still really strong, and the netizen scores are really high. So it's gonna go long, and people are desperate to get those IMAX tickets.
Okay, so that was Oppenheimer, out now in Korean cinemas. Next, we have a local release, and it's a romantic comedy, Honey Sweet. It has the interesting Korean title, 달짝지근해 7510, and it's also interesting because it's clearly targeted at a slightly older crowd than the conventional rom-com, with the main characters being middle-aged. So, Jason, can you tell us more about this film? I should actually say that Korean title again with the Korean numbers. 달짝지근해 7510.
Yeah, I'll get to why. It features Yoo Hae-jin and Kim Hee-seon, both established actors, somewhat older stars, and than the stars you tend to get in your kind of standard rom-com. But I do think actually this film worked for me, and I see it working quite well for younger and older crowds alike. Yoo Hae-jin plays a character called Chi-ho. Now, i.e. that's the Chil O in the title.
Yep.
And so he plays a researcher at a confectionery company. He's very particular, socially awkward, can't really... it's very difficult for him to make relationships with other people other than those that are very close to him. So he has this older brother, bit of a dropout loser, played by Champio. He's using his younger brother to borrow money, drinking, and basically get into debt. And so the researcher goes to a loan company to pay off his brother's debt, and that's when he meets Il-young, so i.e. the 10 in the title. And so, they basically begin to develop feelings. Initially, it's Il-young, but then it's a problem for Chio to kind of express his feelings in the way that she's looking for, and it comes across as a bit awkward. Nevertheless, they do, kind of come closer together. But the problem they have is Chio's older brother, and then you've got Il-young's daughter. She's a single mum, so they're kind of against their relationship. So, in terms of story, that's pretty much it. Features a really interesting cast. Actually, you've got Jin Sung-gyu as who plays Chio's kind of narcissistic boss, and then you've got cameos galore, including Jung Woo-sun, Im Shi-won, Go Ah-sung, and it's directed by Lee-han. Now he's directed some well-known dramas such as Punch, Thread of Lies, done very well at the box office, and it's written by Lee Byung-hun, not the actor, the director, who brought us 20 and Extreme Job. So you've got an interesting pairing there, and so decent film.
Okay, so Mark, what did you make of it, especially in the context that it is a middle-aged rom-com, which is not something that's we've seen a lot of, particularly here in Korea, I think.
Yeah, it kind of reminds you a little bit of some of the rom-coms you get in America, like the Nancy Meyers films. I kind of thought a little bit of those, even though it's very different because it is a Korean film. But it's very
Korean.
But it's very Korean. But it has the middle-aged protagonists.
Yeah.
And also, the fact that, as Jason mentioned, the director is coming more from a drama kind of background, that gets kind of put in the movie, which makes the movie a bit different than the traditional, lighter romantic comedies. It also makes it a little awkward at points, especially the ending, the happy ending.
Oh, yeah.
I get what it's going for, but it's a little problematic, let's say, to say the least, in some ways, in terms of the older brother character that Jason mentioned. I won't spoil it, but there's just some aspects to it that... made me like it a bit more, or at least say, okay, it's a bit more interesting than the typical romantic comedy you get, but it also brings up other things, and there's just a lot of tonal kind of problems maybe with the movie in terms of doesn't quite
balancing the drama and the comedy.
There's great scenes in it, actually. There's a couple really scenes I really liked. But there's also, just some scenes that don't work especially towards the end. But it's in terms of the genre, if you like these kind of films, I think, again, it's very, very predictable in the normal ways. But I think it's maybe worth checking out if you do like the genre. And it does do some different things, least, even if they don't quite always work, or they might have some.
But still, it stands out.
Yeah, it does stand out. It's not totally the same. Yeah.
Right. Anything more to add, Jason?
Yeah, no, I mentioned earlier, I agree with Mark. It certainly is different. I think Lee Byung-hun's writing, he tends to have a dry sense of humour, and that's quite unusual for Korea. It tends to be rather slapstick. And so we talked about that when we watched Dream, his film that was released earlier on this year. And I guess the mix of Lee Byung-hun's writing and Lee-han's style, I think that makes it stand out. Performances are good. I mean, I agree with Mark in that some of the scenes towards the end are a bit problematic. But I actually responded well to this film. I went to see it was it 9 o'clock in the morning, and audiences both young and old were laughing away, and it's very Korean. It's very sentimental.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, maybe I'm just getting old and soppy, but it worked for me, and I came out with a smile on my face. So there you go.
Yes, that is something we've noted before, actually. But yes, anyway, that's Honey Sweet. We'll leave it there. That's all for Movie Spotlight this week. Jason, Mark, as always, thank you for your reviews, and we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, take care.